This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
This is just one of the transfers that had themselves a nice game for Arkansas. And let's talk with Mike Irwin from Pig Trail Nation about this season opening dub against the Bearcats. Mike, appreciate your time, especially here on a holiday. How are you?
I'm doing really well today, Phil. Thanks.
You got it, man. So thoughts on the 200th win ever at Razorback Stadium, but the first time Arkansas's ever opened up the year by defeating a ranked team at Razorback Stadium. What stood out to you?
I think the quality of the competition in that game, if you compare it to other SEC games, I think there were maybe 4 games that on paper looked competitive. I mean, Georgia played Oregon, and that turned out to be a blowout, but we know Florida and Utah was a good game. LSU, Florida State, good game. So it was one of those type games as opposed to these blowout games for the rest of them. And I think maybe some fans still don't get it, that was an SEC quality opponent. That was like an SEC game. I think if you put Cincinnati in the West this year, they might finish second or third. They impressed me with how hard they played, how their offensive line battled, their defensive line battled. They came back from mistakes and kept fighting. It was a tough game. And I sort of felt when it was over like Sam Pittman did when he walked into that press conference and just let out a big sigh of relief and said, "We won. I'm glad that's over."
Yeah, I mean, the heat, I think, was part of it. That second half was incredibly long, and just the emotions of being back to it. But you're right. I mean, you could hear it in Coach Pittman's voice in the broadcast post game interview with Chuck, and in the post game interview that everybody else took part in. He was emotionally winded. I think that pretty much mirrored everybody else that was around the stadium. Was this a matter of, and maybe this is the case with a lot of college football games, but maybe no other week other than week 1 is where this really kind of takes center stage. Was it a matter of the team that made the fewer mistakes won? Is that what you saw too?
Sure. I think that's the one thing I saw from Cincinnati is and look, I watched a lot of games over the weekend, starting with Thursday, and then I even watched the game last night between Florida State and LSU. A lot of bonehead mistakes by teams because it's the first game of the year. I thought Arkansas was relatively mistake-free. There were a couple of little things there, but, yeah, Cincinnati made some mistakes, especially the penalties, the way they kept backing themselves up. And that might have been the difference in the game, but that's part of it. That's how you prepare a team. I mean, LSU is just getting blasted. Brian Kelly's getting blasted, and they lost by a point. But there were just so many bonehead mistakes that they made, and they just looked unprepared to play that game at times.
Yeah, and you even, Luke Fickell even spoke about trying to ready his team for the atmosphere, all throughout the week. And I think last week, too, they talked about it. I think they tried to prepare for it as much as possible. But Sam Pittman put him in those 4 penalties after KJ and Rocket fumbled the ball at the 3. 2 of them were just delay of game penalties. Pretty simple stuff. And Sam Pittman put that on the fans, being incredibly loud. I think the decibel level got up over 100 when I saw the meter on the video board. So, I mean, was this a game that you can kind of put on they won because they were also the home team?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly think if Arkansas has to go to Cincinnati, they lose that game, and there would be no disgrace in that. I have that much respect for their program. I think Luke Fickell has built that program back. It wasn't down the way Arkansas was, but he's built it up. They've got depth. They've got talent. They can replace when they lose 9 guys to the NFL draft. You can see the talent on that team and the way they play hard. And we got a lot of video sent to us from one of our sister stations up in Cincinnati, and was able to look at some of the things their coaches were doing and the way they were interacting with their players and the kind of stuff they do at practice. And you can tell it's just a well-coached team. So, again, when you can go up against somebody like that and win that game, you just put it aside and say, I wish we hadn't had to play that kind of game in the season opener, but we're glad it's behind us. I think what's going to be interesting, Phil, is to see the comparison between Cincinnati and South Carolina when they come in here this week. A lot of fans are already saying things like, well, we can't allow those. I mean, Spencer Rattler, he's a passer. He'll take advantage. I don't know. I looked at his QBR rating. in that game that they struggled in, and it was way below what I saw in this game from Cincinnati's quarterback. I mean, He threw a couple of picks. They struggled. 28.6 rating and 2 picks and just 1 touchdown for them against Georgia State. So it's going to be interesting to compare South Carolina with Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's the better team by far.
Yeah, and Georgia State got into the backfield a lot. They sacked Rattler 3 times, 7 tackles for a loss. This defensively, it's funny that we talk about the question marks or the unknowns going into this season defensively, and the thought is, well, it's a deep secondary. You're deep at safety specifically. You might have to be deep at safety right now. I know Sam Pittman will talk at noon, and I'm sure he'll be asked about Miles Slusher and Jalen Catalon. So, you're already having your depth at safety tested. Cornerback got beat quite a bit. Just didn't really hurt them because Bryant overthrew his receivers so often. The defensive line, though, looked like a strength, especially the transfers, Mike.
Well, and what's not talked about a lot in that game is there were a bunch of quarterback hurries by Arkansas. So some of those overthrows, he was under pressure. He was about to be hit. He was sacked 3 times in the game. So Arkansas put pressure on that guy. It wasn't just he's mysteriously missed throws. I think he composed himself in the second half and looked a lot better and threw the ball better. And some of it was, the fact that Arkansas had 2 of its best man coverage guys out for most of the second half. But I just think you got to give credit to Arkansas. They put a lot of pressure on him. And I'm, again, looking ahead to this game this week. I look at Georgia State rushed for 200 yards on South Carolina. You think Arkansas is not going to try to run the ball on those guys after looking at that? So we'll have a better idea. This is the way it works early in the year. Each time a game is played, you have a better picture of what you're dealing with. But so far, so good, I think, through one game.
What were your thoughts on Drew Sanders? Statistically, he was good. Five tackles, got his first sack, lined up everywhere. On the outside, came up between the tackles sometimes, stayed back at linebacker on occasion, barely was off the field. What'd you see in Drew Sanders? He's probably the most talked about defensive player for Arkansas, and he never played it down for them yet.
Yeah, and he had a good debut. He could have laid an egg. With all that pressure on him, you've got to come out, you're a transfer, you've got to do something, and he played well. What we're seeing with Sam Pittman is he takes these guys out of the portal, and he makes use of them. There's some serious stuff going on in the portal where you bring guys in and they don't do anything. Those 2 guys that LSU got from Arkansas, not much of a factor. One didn't even play at all. So, yeah, he's getting stuff out of his portal guys, and I thought Sanders, you can't have a better linebacker duo, I think, than he and Bumper Poole. Those guys were very active in that game. I wouldn't want to have to go up against them.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up the running game, Mike, as far as, from Cincinnati game and for South Carolina. What was your thoughts on Rocket Sanders, who got over 100 yards, and also, A.J. Green only got in there for a few, but seems like a really talented young freshman to come in and, could be a guy that replaces some productivity while you're still waiting on Dominique Johnson.
Yeah, I had a buddy ask me, he said, I don't know. It looked like Sanders was kind of avoiding contact. He didn't look like, he was finding ways to criticize him. I said, well, he rushed for 6 yards a carry. I said, I think part of your problem is you're not giving Cincinnati's D-line and their linebackers enough credit. He rushed for 6 yards a carry against those guys, went over 100 yards, and then you also had A.J. Green get 6 yards on 3 carries. Dominion came in. He had 8 yards on 2 carries. Arkansas's running game was good, and I thought the O-line, for the most part, blocked well, but they were in a battle. It wasn't a matter of just go out and push these guys around because they're not anybody, and it's a rent-a-win game, and you'll be fine. You just have to, anytime you talk about this game, you have to be careful to understand who the opponent was.
Mm-hmm. And staying with the running game, are we going to get to see Dominique Johnson next week, you think?
I think so. I was asked about that last week when he came to practice, because I'd said I didn't think he would play early. and he's got that knee brace on, and I'm just looking at it, and he's moving around it, and he didn't have any swelling, and people are going, are you sure you don't think he'll play? And I said, I don't think he'll play unless they need him. And they didn't need him, so he didn't play. But I think, they'll look at him some more, let him get some more contact in practice. I think maybe we will see him this week.
So you mentioned, you can't forget about who you played against. People usually forget about the first game just because it's the first game, and in a couple of months you're focused on what's ahead of you, and this is a win to build upon. I mean, I didn't forget who Arkansas played. Cincinnati lost 2 games the last 2 years, and they were to SEC teams in bowl games. One of them in the playoffs. I mean, they won 44 games the previous 4 years. And maybe they're not quite as good as last year, but I think it's still a pretty darn good football team. So, to put in perspective, it is the first week, but this is something to build upon, right?
Well, I think it is, absolutely. Again, if you look at this, I think this is why Sam Pittman breathed that sigh of relief. If you look at this schedule, it's tough enough as it is. And then you start off with that game. If you lose that game, then you got some issues. What do you think LSU's looking at now? It was a 1-point loss, but now they're just getting hammered everywhere. So, again, I don't think it could have started any better. I like the fact that they were challenged. I do. I like the fact that they got in some situations where they got to make something happen. One of the most impressive things to me was when they were holding on to that 7-point lead with 4.5 to go, got the ball on their own 26, 3rd and 9. They don't convert there. They punt. You could absolutely lose that game there. And what did K.J. Jefferson do? He hadn't rushed a lot. He'd had that. Most of his rushing came on that 1 touchdown run. Mm-hmm. But he went right through the middle of their defense when there was nobody open on that pass, got the first down, and they never gave the ball back. That is impressive when you can do that against a really good team.
Yeah, if you can hold the ball for 5.5 minutes against a defense that's worn down by that point but tries to be physical, like that's how you win games at the end. And I mean, that's kind of a difficult thing to do at times now. Arkansas's offense is an offense that's built to score quickly. They had 2 touchdown drives of less than a minute, but it is awesome to see that if necessary, they can grind that clock down.
Well, and compare that, for instance, to what Florida State had, where they've got the ball on their own 2-yard line. They can put this game away totally. And they pitch the ball and fumble, and LSU drives 99 yards and scores and had a chance to either to put that game into overtime and maybe win. You look at what Arkansas did when they were in a much more critical situation and then Florida State, and Arkansas did what they had to do. Florida State put tremendous pressure on itself with that mistake. So, again, I just start comparing with what I've seen, and I don't have too much to complain about. Somebody want to know what are the things they need to work on. Well, you work on everything, but I don't see a lot of things that you look at and go, yeah, that was really screwed up. You need to improve on that.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens against the Gamecocks. I agree. I think you played a better team this past weekend than you're going to face this Saturday, and we'll talk about it on Monday next week. Mike, we'll always appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on today.
See you guys.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Mike Irwin from Pig Trail Nation joining us on Halftime. He's been joining us for a little more than a month on Mondays, and we certainly do appreciate that. Phone calls and texts if you want to react to that, 877-377-6963 to get with us. If you're wondering where Arkansas will be ranked in the polls, you got to wait until tomorrow. You got a ranked team playing tonight. It is Clemson and Georgia Tech. So they're going to release the rankings tomorrow. That's when we'll get into it. See if Arkansas... Well, they're going to move up. You imagine you had 4 top 25 teams ranked in front of, 3 of them ranked in front of Arkansas that lost. And I would imagine going from 19, what do you think, up to 14, 15, something like that?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, you'll be in the teens. And we're going to be in our third segment after this quick break. Stay with us.
BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports, contests, and events with first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join today and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV 50. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV 50. Bet online, where the game starts.